Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. All right, welcome back for another episode of the Freight 360 podcast. If you're brand new here, you caught us at a great episode. We're going to be talking a little bit about the back office in brokerage, what kind of goes on behind the scenes. Maybe you're a sales rep, maybe you are a carrier rep, and there's all these other people in your building, and you're not really sure what they do. We'll talk through that and explain why they're fundamental and all that good stuff. Continue to share us with all your friends. I just talked to somebody earlier today that thanked me because they said at their brokerage, apparently their supervisor or training team didn't feel the need to give them adequate training, and he was able to use our content to become a very successful broker in that company. So continue to share us. We appreciate it. And if you want the best training from us, make sure to check out the Freight Broker Basics course. That's our full-length self-paced course online. And you can go through everything from how to start your brokerage, how to prospect new leads and shippers, and how to close them, and how to overcome objections and find carriers, and really just succeed overall as a broker. And this episode is brought to you by Blue Book Services. Are you looking to qualify sales prospects? Looking to develop trusted, sustainable business partnerships? Well, look no further. The Lumber Blue Book is an online directory and credit resource of lumber and forest products covering mills, manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers. Their database of over 23,000 lumber companies can be searched and segmented to develop sales and marketing campaigns. Members will receive access to real-time credit and business information for companies throughout the lumber industry. To learn more, go to lumberbluebook.com and click join today. That's lumberbluebook.com. Ben, happy 200. Fail.
2-century mark. There you go.
If you guys can't see, I just cracked a drink here. But if you heard it, you heard my failed attempt at getting it open on the first try. But cheers, man. We made it to 200 episodes. I pulled some stats before the recording today. Over 750,000 total downloads since we started this thing just a handful of years ago. So we're coming up on 1 million. Remember when 100,000 was like our milestone and we hit that? I do. And it's just snowballed, man. So
man, it's outstanding. I'm like, I can't believe it. The 2-century mark. We've literally done 200 of these at this point, and that our downloads are at 750,000.
Yeah. Well, what's cool is you see like a lot of podcasters will have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes because they record almost every day or maybe 2 to 3 times a week. And we're just once a week. And we've even had, I think we've had a couple of weeks where we just had kind of a replayed episode, so we didn't call that a new one. So I think we typically have like 202 episodes, but 2 of them are just repeats. So 200, happy 200. That's a good one. Appreciate all you guys.
Bicentennial.
Bicentennial, just like 1976.
Yeah.
So don't forget, there still is a survey going on. Link in the show notes or episode notes, description box, whatever you're using to take this content and consume it. You can win $1,000. There's 3 winners, and 5 to 10 minutes is what we're being told as feedback on average completion time on what it's like to be a broker right now. So sports, this is a really weird time of year. So not only is there only baseball on, but baseball is in the middle of the season break, the All-Star break. The only news I have is that the National League beat the American League this week, and it's the first time in like 10 years. So tennis is on right now, though, right? Like, what's the big tennis thing? Is it Wimbledon or something?
I couldn't even tell. I mean, Wimbledon is one of that and the U.S. Open. All I know related to tennis. It might be the U.S.
Open. I have no idea. But so anyone that's a big tennis fan, I apologize for my ignorance. We always say you don't know what you don't know, and that is something that I do not know. So, but I will say that the owner of the Bills and the Sabres, Terry Pegula, and his wife, his wife Kim, their daughter, forget her first name, she made it to like the semifinals for the women's with whatever tennis tournament it is. She's a big tennis player. So
that's awesome.
She got knocked out last year, but as the last I saw on TV, she's making her way through the championship. So a little hometown Buffalo tennis facts for you right there. In the news, I'll cover this first one, then you might have something. But there's a link. We'll throw it in the show notes. The title of the episode or the article is the FMCSA advisory panel targets predatory leasing contracts. So we talked about leasing. So basically, let's say a driver contracts on with a motor carrier and does a lease to purchase program, meaning they're not going out there to get their own authority. They don't own their own truck. They're going to lease on, or they're going to get contracted as an independent contractor to a carrier, and they will be able to lease a truck from the carrier. And the typical terms are like, hey, you're going to pay X amount back to us each week, and that's going to be your lease payment on the truck. Now, the predatory part, and I didn't really know about this until I read the article, is the actual successful lease to purchase was so low. It was like 5 or 10% actually worked. And that stat might even be high. I don't have it right in front of me. But what they would do is, because this trucking company controls by forced dispatch the lanes that this driver is running, and they control how much the payments are due for that lease to purchase program, what they were saying was there was predatory practices. So basically the carrier would then dispatch their driver in lanes that were not high paying, and then they would default on their payments back to them, therefore essentially making the lease null and void, or basically they defaulted on it. So they were not able to purchase their truck at the end. And then the carrier is acting like an employer, controlling the work that they do, and they're also controlling the rates they have to pay back for the lease, but then making that driver do all the work of an independent contractor. So,
and all the risk
there. Yeah. All right. Well, what do you got from DAT?
They did a press release this week. I should have had this kind of right in front of me, but let me pull this up and it was related to fraud and what we've been talking about. We're going to be doing an upcoming episode. We've been talking about it. And it was talking about, let's see here, commitment from DAT's point of view to provide resources and to fight back related to, well, really just fraud, right? So one of which is tougher verification protocols, DAT implementing a multi-factor authentication to verify a user's identity for logging on to DAT1. It's also being introduced to customers on a rolling basis this month and will help protect against theft of credentials. Education, DAT's launched DAT Fraud Protection Program, a website on the back of DAT with free security-related information, and then lists out the initiatives DAT's doing to reduce fraud in the industry.
There you go. Whenever someone's making a step forward to prevent against fraud and protect brokers and shippers and all that, I'm a fan. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure we have people out there that think it's not enough and it's not fast enough. But again, things take time. And at the very least, somebody's doing something about it, because it doesn't seem like the FMCSA is jumping in to do anything about this anytime soon.
Go figure. A government organization not being efficient. That would never happen.
Proactive? That's crazy, right?
Let's give a shout out to DAT and we'll hop in a back office.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads on trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They've got the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the industry. You'll get real-time rates on every lane, so you know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Plus, you get instant access to top bids from qualified carriers around the country. Check out the show notes for a free month of DAT1 with a link.
Absolutely. All right, so today's episode is all about the back office roles. We have a short form blog already released on the website, a short form video coming out soon on this, but we wanted to have a full discussion for anyone who likes to listen to us for 60 minutes a week to get our full breakdown on the back office. And what's cool is, Ben, the phase that you're in right now with brokerage, with growing something, right? Back office becomes a big part of it. So I'm going to let you pick my brain on a lot of stuff. I've dealt with growing brokerages, and it's an ongoing thing, right? Hiring new departments and new people and figuring out, when do I have to hire a dedicated person to do this role? So we're going to break it all down in this episode. And we're going to start with accounting. So we always talk about how freight brokers are secretly the bank for the freight industry, right? It's an often overlooked aspect. People think, oh, we're just salespeople. We just find trucks. We're essentially the cash flow for the entire transaction. Remember, a customer might pay us in 45 to 60 days, but that truck will get paid in maybe 3 weeks, 30 days, and sometimes they want a quick pay in 1 to 3 days. So there's a huge cash flow gap there. It's the accounting team's job to make sure that they can see how much money's on hand to predict that cash flow need, but also to make sure that we're collecting money from our customers and we're paying money to our carriers. So in just about every company out there, accounting breaks down into two main sides. You have your accounts receivable, or AR as it's called for short, and your accounts payable, or AP as it's shortened to. So they do exactly what you would sound like. The receivable team receives money, right? That's your customer. They're going to be sending them a bill or an invoice and collecting or receiving that money. And the accounts payable team does exactly that. They do the paying. They're paying carriers. They're also paying other vendors, and we'll talk about some of these other vendors later on in the show today, but they're paying things like the light bill and our insurance premiums and any licenses that we have to pay for maybe your email or a TMS platform or a janitorial service, if it's just another vendor like that. So AR and AP, they're a lot of times the bulk of, well, I shouldn't say the bulk. They're probably one of the larger back office departments, though, because you think about it, if a brokerage puts through 40 loads a day or 100 loads a day, or for some of these big ones, thousands and thousands of loads a day, that means there's that many invoices to pay out to carriers and that many invoices to send and collect on for customers. It's a very, very robust department when you think about the grand scheme of things, because not every single transaction goes smoothly, right? You would hope that, great, a load delivers, the carrier sends their POD and invoice to us promptly, our accounting team sends an invoice out, the customer pays exactly on time, and everybody's happy. Does it ever happen that way, though, Ben?
No. So let's talk about some real world situations, right? And get
Yes.
into the nitty gritty of it, right? So, and I mean, from a broker's point of view, right? Like often, depending on the way you're set up, like we are responsible for making sure that, like, one, we get all of the documents from our carriers to make sure that our AR team has the ability to send the invoices to our customer, right, with the proper paperwork, right? So the one I think that is really often overlooked is how much time do you think is spent, and I'm curious numbers on this, between just literally going back and forth with carriers to get the correct paperwork before they can do the thing that they need to do, right?
Yeah. So I think this is a great question because not every brokerage does it the same way. And those that do it differently from how I'm going to prescribe it have something to learn here. So maybe write this down. What shouldn't happen is a month down the road, we realize, oh, this load we haven't paid on this load yet, or we haven't collected on this load yet. What happened? Oh, we never invoiced the customer. Oh, because we never got paperwork from the carrier. Oh, right. That's a bad way. That's a reactive. That's a FMCSA way of going about doing business, right? So here's a way that I do it currently, and there's other varieties to do it, but it kind of seems like this. It's more of a proactive approach. So when you tender a load to a carrier, you should make it very clear verbally, and it should be included in your rate confirmation how to get settled on that payment, right? It's your remittance information. So clearly tell them, hey, when you deliver, please send your signed bill of lading or your POD, proof of delivery, and an invoice to us to this email address, or however you want to receive it. It's typically done via email or whatnot. But if you have an online portal that they want to upload or take a picture or whatnot, that's cool too. Make sure the driver knows how to do that, or the dispatcher, or whoever it is at that trucking company that's going to be getting paid. And also, you should have, if they're going to be using a factoring company, make sure that they can clearly reiterate that information to their factoring company if the factoring company is going to be sending paperwork in on their behalf. The next part is you're going to always have ones that slip through the cracks. They forgot, they sent the wrong email address, whatever it might be. What I do now at our company, what we do is we have an automated report once a week that notifies every single broker in our company of all of their loads that have not been billed yet, right? And we don't bill on loads normally until the carrier sends their paperwork in. Some customers we do for other reasons, but now we're proactively letting every broker in the company know, hey, these loads right here might need your attention. Okay, if a load is delivered 7 days ago or 6 days ago and we haven't gotten paperwork yet, remind your carrier that delivered it, send your paperwork in because we want to pay you and we want to get paid on it, right? So things like that are proactive. We're letting the carrier know up front on the phone and the rate confirmation, and we're going to be able to remind them because we're being reminded by the computer to let them know they haven't invoiced us yet. Make sense?
And that one is by far the one that I always found the most confusing when I started in this industry. I'm like, I got to track somebody down to send them money. I'm like, of all the problems I thought I would have to deal with, this is one that I never thought would have hit my radar. and it is. I mean, it's one of the things that becomes like, I mean, when you're doing a lot of business, this is every week, and a certain portion of your loads fall into this category. When you're running at least 100 a week, like there's probably, I would guess, 4 or 5, if not more, depending on which carriers you're using, that you got to track them down, get the BOL, you call them, they'll say they'll send it to you. Days pass, they're doing other things. And it becomes like an ongoing job, just shagging, getting documents from carriers, right? And I'm curious too, when you think about this, right? Like, do you think about it, I'm going to pretend like I'm a client, right? At what load volume or dollar volume, however, whatever metric you think about this, would it start to make sense for me to have a dedicated person doing this job? Let's say I'm a 2-person brokerage. I got an assistant. I'm doing most of my invoicing, and we talk to these people all the time, right? I'm going to tell you right now, and we're doing about 50 loads a week, 40 loads a week, somewhere around there, and I got 16 hours a week in invoicing in between doing the other things, right? That's a pretty common situation for any brokerage, right?
So
where do you think it makes sense?
So every person has a different level of efficiency. It's one of my pet peeves if I'm on a call with somebody or in a meeting with somebody and it takes them an hour to get done what I could have accomplished in 5 or 10 minutes. But that's just business style and personality. It's going to differ with everybody. Well, let's say you have a well-oiled machine. I would say, and this is not like doctrine or anything like that, just my personal opinion. If you are spending a certain amount of time doing a task that is taken away from, if it's impacting your ability to maintain, if not grow your business, then it's time to start looking at hiring somebody. Now, your first hire is not going to be a full-time dedicated accounting person, right?
Right.
And it might not be a full-time dedicated track and trace person. It could be someone that does a little bit of all these little back office tasks that we're going to talk about today. It's the things that are not producing revenue. But I would say when you have at least 50% of someone's day that can be spent doing a certain job, it is on average, it's time to hire a full-time person. Because that way, if on average they're 50, maybe 60% at capacity, they'll be able to handle the influx when you have a busy week or as you grow, right? Because the whole concept here is you want to grow your business. So if I'm hiring when I'm at 50% capacity, I can handle the heavy days when those happen. But also as that 50 becomes 60, 70%, now I'm thinking I got to start interviewing and hiring for another accounting person. And that process does not happen overnight. You might have to interview 2 to 3 people. You might have to hire somebody who doesn't work out and then hire a second person. You have to train them up. You have to make them proficient, understand your SOPs. So I would say when it's 50% of their day, that is like, boom, dedicated person. And they might have some flexibility to help out other departments as needed or help you with little things that pop up here and there. But that's kind of the benchmark that we use is if on average everyone's 50% full capacity, we're good. No one feels overworked. They know when it's a busy day. When it's a light day, you can send someone home early, kind of give them an attaboy or reward for a good hard work and staying caught up and everything. That's my personal opinion on it. I will say, and this kind of goes on all of these back office roles, if I'm a business owner and I start my own brokerage, you better believe that I'm working like 14-hour days before I even think about hiring anybody. Because if I try to hire somebody too early, I'm not at my full potential yet, right? You're going to spend your first 18, 24 months grinding it, building your business before you should then be putting somebody else in a position of responsibility or decision making of your company that ultimately determines if it's going to succeed or could potentially fail. So
Yeah. And
think about how much time you and I spent just putting content together and doing all this stuff with Freight 360 before we even considered having somebody help out with marketing or any of the other stuff that folks can help us out with. Right.
yeah, I'm also curious. One last question on this. And again, this will vary amongst companies drastically based on the software, the accounting systems you have, and the requirements of your TMS and how integrated they are with your accounting system, right? So again,
Yes.
these are not meant to be, gospel or applied in every situation because, and again, like I've been in these systems, I've worked in these systems. Some are much easier to use and you can get through. And again, I think the good brokerages that are looking at this are tracking that, right? Like the clients I have, that's one of the things we look at is like, how long does it take you to do an average invoice? Like, and again, you don't have to have a
Couple minutes.
stopwatch.
Yeah, a couple minutes if you've got a good system in place should be the
Yep,
answer there. Because it would look something
exactly.
like this. Carrier sends an invoice in. You're going to have a human being double check. Does the number that they're invoicing us for match the number in the system? Is the carrier match? Is their email domain match? Like little fraud stuff like that, right? And then then you go ahead and schedule their payment in whatever system you're using for your payables, whether it's QuickBooks or Great Plain or whatever accounting system. And you go to the other side and you want to generate your invoice to the customer. That should be pretty quick too. Make sure the numbers all match up. Does the customer require a copy of a scale ticket or in and out times, POD, whatever they require? Put them all together in attachment through your system and boom, send it out. Now, if you're not using efficient software like that, which does cost money, it's a very, very manual process. That could take you 15, 20, 30 minutes to do that exact same process without the technology to back you up. That's why when I see that you can get QuickBooks in your full accounting suite for like $50 a month for a small company, even less than that, I just, it blows my mind why people won't do that. They would rather spend 15, 20 times as much time doing the work themselves than pay $50. Man, we should just get
I
an
don't think,
affiliate with like an accounting
yeah,
system or something like that, the way we're talking
I
about it
know.
right now.
I just don't think many people value their time or look at it the same way. They look at it as if it has no cost, but it always has opportunity cost. Because if you're doing that, you're not prospecting, you're not moving freight, you're not building more relationships. So let's go into the next one: credit.
Yep. So, one more thing. I want to hit on the AR part, right? So one of
Yeah,
the things that AR does is track unpaid invoices, right? And they're going to do the collections activity. So again, this first accounting person could be doing both sides of it, and that's totally common. And if it's just you doing a brokerage, it's going to be you doing this, right? So you want the same way that I mentioned automated reports telling you what's not been invoiced yet. Automated reports showing an aging report is what you're going to want to have in place too. And what is aging? Aging is how old or how aged is a certain invoice. So if our terms are, hey, pay your bill in 30 days, I want to know at 40 or 35 or 45 or on day 30 what's not been paid yet. So I know what's current and what's past due. And then you're going to start making phone calls, emails, whatever you have to do to follow up on a customer that has not paid an invoice. And it's not always, hey, you're being a scumbag not paying your bills. It might have went to the wrong email address. They might have lost it because they have 2,000 loads a month. There's all kinds of things like that. But yeah, that's another part of accounting. But yeah, let's move to credit. So the credit department, and what I would say the main role of credit is to protect the company, right? So what does a credit department do? Well, they're the ones that manage the amount of exposure or how much credit are we extending out to our customers? Are we making anybody prepay? Are we making anybody pay upon delivery? Or do they have standard 30-day terms and basically have an open checkbook with us because they've worked with us for years, proven track record of being a healthy, financially stable company, no issues there. And they're going to use credit reporting tools. They're going to look at historical data from your own internal company and your TMS on a customer's activity with you. And they're going to determine based on the comfort level of the ownership. So if it's just you, how comfortable are you extending credit out to somebody that you've never worked with before, or maybe you have? And they're going to decide, hey, we'll give this much credit in these terms. Or yes, we'll increase to this much more in credit. Or no, we're not comfortable yet. We want maybe some references or just put them on prepay. That's essentially what your credit department's job is to make sure that we're not taking on too much risk as the bank in this transaction.
And I mean, to be honest, this is really a brokerage's procurement department, right? You're evaluating the risk of the companies you're working with in a certain degree, right? Like, and again, you're not
Yep.
purchasing things from them, but you're absolutely extending credit and in a way lending them money on your behalf. And if they don't pay those bills, you are the one that gets stuck with the tab, like 100%. So why you need
Yep.
to absolutely manage this. And this is one of the things that can really derail a company's progress. Like there's a company we worked with very closely and they're doing very well now, but in their first year in business as they were scaling up, they took like a $300,000 hit from a customer that folded and didn't pay their bills. And it took about 3 years to recover from that and to be fully clear. I mean, from there, because then, if you're not cash flush, and that's a lot of money for a new company, then they don't have the money to pay their bills in time, which is the other risk, right? Not only are you on that hook, but like you're still paying your carriers, remember, before your money comes in from your customers. So that
Yeah.
money's long been out the door. You're waiting to be paid. And if they're a poor credit risk, meaning they don't pay their bills on time or at all, or on the verge of never being able to pay their bills again, you could end up working with a customer that you think you're really profitable. And the reality is they're just like, thank God someone's moving our freight so we can at least get these sales in the door before we shutter everything.
Yeah.
Again, it's an extreme
And
example, but
there's
happens.
ways to protect yourself and kind of outsource this. And so we've talked about factoring. By no means is this episode a deep dive in factoring, but there's factoring companies will handle your invoicing, your carrier pay, and your credit approval, because they're not going to extend a credit line or send an invoice to somebody on your behalf if they don't think that person's going to pay their bills. So a factoring company at a cost will offer those services to you. And if you go to the recommended products down in the description box, Hall Pay is a trusted partner of ours. They're probably one of the lowest cost options. Great choice for a brand new or smaller brokerage. Another option too is a receivables insurance company. So what they'll do is if you extend a credit line out, they'll actually insure a portion of it. You'll have a deductible and a premium like any other insurance. But if the company goes out of business, you can file a claim and the insurance company will pay out because they agreed to that credit line before insuring it for you. So those are some other things to think about when it comes to the credit department. But things that credit should be monitoring, all right, is a customer trending in a certain direction. For example, are they starting to pay a little bit slower on their invoices than normal? That should be a red flag. You should know about this stuff. That's where good reporting and business intelligence tools come into play and help out business owners. Are they nearing their credit line? And if they are, why is that? Is it because they're slow paying, or is it a good thing because they're just increasing their business volume? Right. And I also think it's a good practice, the same way that we want to look at credit reports on a customer, it's good to report your payment history and AR activity and history with the proper resources yourself. So we do it every single week at our company to make sure that we're providing the most up-to-date information to the credit reporting companies that are out there. And we're happy to do it because we appreciate having other companies also share that data. So that's your credit team.
All right. Carrier compliance.
Okay, good. Carrier compliance. So this role can, again, when you're a smaller company, it's probably not its own standalone department. But when you scale, you're likely going to have at least one person, if not a team, whose job is carrier compliance. So what we mean is this carrier good? Okay, and that could be, they might use a mix of software or some of the tools that are out there to help them get this information, or they might just use the available information from within their own TMS, historically, the FMCSA's SAFER system, all of that. But they're looking at, does the carrier have an active authority? Does the carrier have the proper insurance? Is the carrier at risk for fraud, theft, double brokerage for reasons X, Y, and Z? And we've covered a ton of those on other episodes. Their job is to make the broker's job and the carrier sales rep's job easy to know that we have had multiple eyes review this, and this is indeed, or this one is not indeed a quality carrier that we want to use. Things that they might be dealing with are conditional carriers, right? What do we do there? Their safety rating is not satisfactory. They're actually in a conditional status. What happened? What have they done to change whatever put them in that status? Maybe somebody's CSA scores, their safety and inspection history scores have been pretty bad lately. Are they trending in the wrong direction, or are they kind of making a bounce back? And what have they been doing internally to make themselves a better overall, safer trucking company? We've had, like, our carrier compliance has looked at carriers and turned them down because they have out of service inspection results for like simple things like tire tread and brake pads, like things that should be part of your routine preventative maintenance on a regular service schedule that carriers are just getting lazy on, or they don't have enough money to be focused on safety and maintenance, things like that. But having a good carrier compliance team, person, or just doing it yourself if you're a smaller brokerage, it's an important part of your job, because if you skip this step, eventually the rule of mass numbers and a volume and quantity of running loads with different carriers, you're going to find one that if you don't do the right things, double brokerage, truck breaks down and delivers late, you might lose a customer over it, or have to pay or get fined by your customer. It could be a whole bunch of stuff. So definitely a big thing there. Do you have any thoughts or input on carrier compliance?
Just that software is making this an easier task. So, I mean, there are quite a few tools out there, right? Whether it's Carrier Assure or Highway,
Carrier 411,
Carrier 411,
Safer Watch, Carrier Watch. They're all out there. Yep. It's like DAT's is Carrier Watch. Safer Watch is Truck Stop. Carrier Assure, Highway are both fairly newer ones, but good tools for sure.
Yeah. So again, as you get bigger, you're going to be doing this manually up front, and you should be doing this, personally at the very beginning. But once you reach a certain size, it then starts to become a little cheaper, and it makes a little more sense to eventually get to a place where you're going to maybe outsource this to a piece of software, right? Or you're going to, obviously have a dedicated person that is going to be doing this.
Yep. Next one is claims. And this is actually, I kind of like the order we went in there. I'm going to come back to the other one on our list here afterward. But so claims, right? There's a freight claim, damage, whatever it might be. Someone's going to actually file the claim on the carrier's insurance. Now, I'll tell you that in our company right now, we did for a while have one person whose main job was credit, carrier compliance, and claims. They wore all three hats because we had the right tools and software in place that they could be efficient at doing all of those. So it was easy to pull credit reports and monitor stuff in the system. It was easy to pull compliance and safety information from carriers. And claims, luckily, we just don't deal with a whole lot of them because we try to have quality carriers by using.
Let me ask you a question.
Before.
At that stage, how many loads a week were you guys moving where one person was able to wear all three hats?
I mean, hundreds. So I don't have the exact number. I'll even tell you, when I was at a larger brokerage and we were doing thousands a week, same person did credit and claims. One person.
The credit and the claims doesn't surprise me as much if you're doing a good job to mitigate the claims, right? The credit, I can see. The question too, I thought you kind of lumped those in with like carriers, or I thought you just referenced that person had a third. What was the third hat you said?
Carrier compliance. So we use software to try to automate the majority of our carrier onboarding and compliance. So if someone wants to add a new carrier, the broker themselves can type in an MC number. The system will pull X, Y, and Z data points. The data will show us they are good to go on all these issues right here. Maybe there's one red flag we want to look into. That's the only time compliance comes into play. We have our parameters set. As long as they meet this criteria, that carrier's fine. But if they hit any one of these as a warning or as a red flag, compliance takes a second look at it, right? Because that's the whole thing is there's so many tools. We just mentioned like 4 or 5 different tools for carrier compliance that it should be very, very easy and fast for somebody to be able to verify a carrier. And if it needs an extra step or an extra set of eyes, that carrier compliance or carrier support rep can quickly go reference that and they're back onto their day. So, yep. So that's that one. The next one on here is I have it listed as procurement, and I'll call this carrier sales track and trace, right? Because it's not always the same. Some people call it procurement, meaning we're procuring trucks, and not every brokerage splits this up. It might be just done by the actual sales rep. Sometimes it's not. The bigger you get, and depending on the business model, the more likely it is that you're going to see this role broken out by a back office. So the simple track and trace stuff, you might have like a customer support line that a carrier can call into for a check call at nighttime, or call in for a fuel advance or a lumper advance or something like that, or call in with an issue because they broke down. That's your simple track and trace, just getting basic updates, handling little things that happen. But your actual carrier sales or procuring truck side of it, again, some companies don't break this out. Some of them do separate these tasks from the sales rep. Their job is, here's an available load. Let me go find a truck. And that could be, I'm going to find 3 trucks and go back with the 3 different trucks I have and the 3 different rates, and we'll make a decision on it, which one's best. It could be, I'm doing a variety of posting on load boards, looking at historical loads inside of our system, going to preferred carriers that we have in our network, using some kind of third-party capacity sourcing tool that's out there. This could look a lot of different ways, but this team, if you have it, is there to help the broker or the sales rep find a truck for their customer's load. Now, where you started off, this was probably not broken out, right? The broker team did all of their own sourcing. Is that correct? Or do you guys have a carrier team?
Well, there was both. There was a carrier team that their full-time job was to just contact carriers and onboard them into our system that's all they did. Literally just make phone calls to, I'm sure, new and existing, and just making sure as many carriers were being added regularly. In addition to that, if we found a carrier, we would kick them over to be approved through the process, but we could find them and do the same thing as well. So it was a little bit of both.
Yep. Good stuff. So we just covered a ton of your main back office tasks. I'm going to hit just very briefly on some of these other ones that are in here, because these will become prevalent as you grow and as you get with some more complex things. Legal, you need to get to a pretty large size to have a dedicated legal team. All right. And when I talk about legal, I'm talking about customer contracts, right? Trying to make sure if I start to do business with the Walmarts and the Nestle's and the Targets of the world, right? Am I going to agree to whatever contract they put in front of me? Do I even understand what this contract means, right? Or am I going to maybe redline it, have a couple discussion points? Hey, this one's non-negotiable. Here's the real sticking points I want to talk through, and maybe revise or reword the contract. But a legal review of a contract is typically done by either a very experienced broker or owner of a company, something like that. Someone who's been at brokerage for a long time and understands the language, or just a transportation attorney. Someone who can read a contract and talk to you in layman's terms about what you're agreeing to and letting you know, here's the risk we take by signing this. So it's oftentimes outsourced. When you're new, you might just have a attorney that you go to periodically for contracts. But as you scale, you might then have somebody on retainer and then have in-house counsel, just one single lawyer that handles all legal matters, whether they're contract specific or, it could be an employment issue, things like that. And eventually the big mega brokerages have big teams of attorneys that handle all this stuff.
They're not as big as you would think, to be honest. I mean, I want to say at the largest one I worked at, which was a handful of billion at the time, had less than a handful in their legal team.
But multiple though. So I'll tell you, that exact company that you worked at, when I was involved in a legal matter with them, they outsourced their attorney need for special stuff like that. So even there, they created flexibility around them. But there's enough business in-house that they had people on staff. That's interesting to hear that, though. Just a handful. So that's your legal part. Next is HR. Again, when you're brand new, small brokerage, you're not going to have an HR generalist or an HR manager at your company. But think about like your hiring, interviewing, things like that. HR could be outsourced through a staffing company. We're obviously partnered with Lean Solutions Group. Actually, a good time. Are you looking to take your freight brokerage or agency to the next level? Look no further than Lean Solutions Group. They are industry leaders in nearshore staffing for logistics companies with offices located in South America, Mexico, and the Philippines. They offer a wide range of exciting positions, including freight broker back office operations, accounting, tech and web development, business development, marketing, customer service, and more. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best in the business. Visit their website at leangroup.com to learn more about the exciting positions they have to offer your brokerage or agency. That's Lean, Lean group.com. So HR, right? One of the things that Lean and other similar companies do is help you with the staffing, right? Going out there and finding candidates. So when you want to hire a back office role or hire a new broker sales rep or whoever it might be, they can do the sourcing of candidates, the interviewing, the onboarding, and going through the employee manual and handbook and all that stuff. They're going to also handle disputes between employees, any of that HR stuff. But again, hands down, going to be an outsourced or a dual hat kind of role until you get to a point when you really need it. Like we don't have an HR person at my brokerage right now, and we're close to $100 million a year company. The company I started in brokerage with did not hire a primary, like sole HR person until we hit closer to 200 million. And even then, that guy handled our company and the sister company that both worked in the same office. Once we got more like $250 million, he hired an assistant. Again, they're handling two different companies, but there's not a whole lot of there's just not a whole lot of HR need for a big team until you get to a larger size. Like I would imagine, the company you worked for probably had a full team, right?
Yeah, per region. There was some
employees.
Yeah, there's somebody assigned per couple hundred people. And again, most of that is because the larger companies turn over lots of people, right? So there's lots of unemployment claims and things. There are lots of things related to insurance, hiring, firing, but also even insurance and managing and making sure the benefits are distributed. And those become very big numbers for larger companies that are W-2 as well. So that is absolutely the case. Far more in HR than internal legal. And it's funny because I thought more about the legal team too. And I was referencing internal. Even the bank I worked at in Pittsburgh that was billions of dollars might have only had 6 in-house attorneys, but we outsourced most of the work to larger firms in the same way.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you have a so typically when you have an internal counsel or internal HR, internal anything, it's going to be, they're going to be general enough to do anything of a broad scope within your company. If you have a very specialized legal case, you're going to likely hire an external attorney. Yep. Even claims, we've hired a third-party claims analyst to look at a specific incident or issue that happened because they have expertise in that. The same way that Blue Book, right? The same way that Blue Book handles disputes between folks in the transportation world. We already gave their ad read, otherwise it'd be a good time to plug them in here. But they're specialized in the fresh fruit and produce world, right? So if you have an issue with that, they're way well versed in claims than the average person when it comes to proper pulping procedures and USDA inspections and reefer breakdowns and how to read a reefer download, all that stuff. So next on our list, we're getting towards the end here, is IT. That's your tech nerds there. No offense to all you tech people. I'm just not as good with computers and software and whatnot as the people that I'm envious of when it comes to their skill level. If you have your own TMS, you will likely have your own IT or development team. Okay. So like my company right now, we do not have a proprietary TMS. We have one that we purchase off the shelf that we have customized to us. So we have an outsourced tech support team that handles the TMS. We also have an outsourced IT team that handles email and other various IT things. And then one of the other guys in the company, one of the hats he wears is basic troubleshooting with folks in the company if they have an issue with, hey, this email is not coming through to me, or I can't figure out this thing in the software. It's not working. I think it's broken. But that can look a lot different if you have your own TMS. When I worked for a company that had its own TMS, the development team started at 2, and as the company grew, we had more users and built out the software more. It got up to like 5 and 6. So it just really all depends. You definitely don't need an IT team if you're small brokerage. Especially if you're buying your TMS from somebody else, they likely have their own support team to help you out. But it's always good to have maybe an outsourced IT company to help you with your phone systems, your internet connection, a VPN if you use it, email, anything like that. Last on our list, vendors, partnerships. So this is usually going to be a hat that somebody wears in addition to their other job. And what I mean by vendors and partnerships is maybe you have a co-brokerage with an LTL company for pricing, or maybe you have a co-brokerage with a couple of rail companies for intermodal pricing. Maybe you have somebody that's an expert in drayage to help out folks with port and rail moves and chassis leasing and things like that. Maybe you have someone that's an expert in all risk insurance, like our folks at LoadSure that offered that we had on earlier in the year. That they know how to get the pricing and the quotes for a one-off insurance policy. It could be someone that's out there looking for new software and tech solutions to help you out with carrier vetting or credit vetting or fill in the blank on whatever it is. But just somebody whose job is kind of like the catch-all of how do we use all the other stuff that's out there to make our job easier. Yep. I would, imagine a lot of the bigger companies tend to have like a vendor relations person or a partnerships manager. I can't think of the perfect name for it, but somebody that kind of handles. Procurement is it would fall because you're paying them, right? So it's
right.
Procurement. Yeah. That's it. There you go. Not to be confused with the procurement we talked about earlier, but that's in there. So like in the past, there was a manager who he managed the carrier compliance team and the accounting team, and he also acted as like that vendor / partnership specialist. Like he was the one with his hands always in all the stuff that was out there. Like if you wanted to know what freight class a certain LTL shipment was, boom, he was the one to go to and figure out through our partnership with Classet what freight class it was. If we had to figure out we wanted to onboard a new LTL carrier for direct pricing, he was the guy to go to. So usually not its own standalone. It's time consuming.
Person, but you need to be in tune with the market and what's out there to be able to evaluate the companies you're looking to work with and to determine whether or not, it's worth the spend that you're going to do with it. So, it's an important aspect, and it comes up a lot with small and large companies, right? Like we're referencing some larger companies, but these are the questions that come up with small brokerages every day and every week, right? At what point in time does it make sense to start buying some more technology to get my time back? At what point in time should I spend more time on this task rather than others? And is it really valuable to my business? So I think a lot of this is really helpful no matter what size business brokerage you're in, where you're at in your journey, because I can tell you, I talked to a few companies that are pretty large this week that, in my opinion, are way overstaffed in some ways and absolutely could use a lot of the tools that we've mentioned to probably reduce quite a bit of that overhead. And again, it's easier to see these things from the outside, but they're there. Pros and cons all throughout the industry.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Last thing I'll say about all of these roles is I want to talk just very quickly about how they work together and the importance of it. So you want to make sure the left hand is talking to the right hand. They know what each other are doing, right? So if the accounting team and the credit team aren't talking, we're going to have issues, right? If a customer's paying their bills late and the accounting team, the AR team doesn't know about it and they're not making collections calls, going to be a big issue, right? if the claims person knows that the same carrier has had 7 claims on loads because they made mistakes with their reefer unit, and the carrier compliance department doesn't know about it, we're going to have an issue. If the credit team doesn't talk to the legal team about contracts and they just go approve a credit line, approve a customer, right? Those are issues right there. So definitely very important things to think about when you're growing your brokerage out. If you hire somebody, even that first hire, right? They don't know what's happening inside your head as the business owner. You need to communicate certain things with them so they can make well-informed decisions on your behalf. So that's all I wanted to say on that. We do have 3 questions from our audience today. And the first one asks, where can I get a BOC3 and a freight broker bond? And additionally, somebody asked on YouTube, can I designate myself on a BOC3? So what is a BOC3? It's the designation of process agents. And check out our some of our YouTube videos or blogs for more information on that. But essentially, you're going to designate a person in each of the 50 states to act on legal matters for you, to be able to be served on your behalf, essentially. So to be eligible to be on a BOC3 as a process agent, you have to be physically located in that state. So if you wanted to list yourself as a designated agent for your state, you can, but you can also just pay like $20 and have a company fill that form out for you and designate 50 people for you. Because that's literally their job, is to be a process agent company. So how do you do that? There's the FMCSA's website. It has a list of all the approved ones by the FMCSA. So check that out. And then how do you get a bond? It's an insurance product, essentially. So you got to have $75,000 value of a freight broker bond or a trust fund. Go to, if you just Google freight broker bonds, you'll find a surety bond companies out there. And your insurance company that provides you maybe liability insurance, things like that, they might be able to shop your bond for you as well. Next question, what is the average cost per mile for carriers? There's no perfect answer here. Just
I'll tell you this though. I was talking about.
Paul, I was going to say, do you have the data from the recent? Because we're about to publish out a carrier course on how to make the most money as an owner operator or a small trucking company, and we pulled a lot of the stats together. And this is like well vetted information coming from analysts at DAT and other various sources. I'm going to ballpark just guess like $1.20, but do you have the average?
Oh yeah, it's closer to $2 a mile, a little over $2
really?
a mile. Yeah, and there's another article. A client of ours sent this to me today. This is titled June 21st from company is Seeds. Not really familiar with them, but it's a pretty reputable source from a pretty reputable company from what he had said. And it's right in line. It says, marginal cost ballooned last year over 2021 to $2.251 per mile. That was last year, surpassing the 2 per mile mark for the first time in history of ATRI's operational cost report. Trucking's cost per mile has jumped 34% since 2021, and 2022's mark is 61 cents higher per mile than 2020.
Wow.
And now fuel's come down a little bit. Now this was written in 2023. Okay, and it comes from.
I'm going to guess you can blame inflation on a lot of it, though. Maintenance.
Oh yeah, maintenance,
cost of truck,
cost of your trucks, cost of your parts, cost of everything that goes into building a truck. Insurance has gone up, labor has gone up, every single thing, right? That's what inflation does, right? Has driven all of these costs up. And yeah, this comes from the American Transportation Research Institute, ATRI, analysis of operational costs of trucking. We can send this in the show note link. I'll text it to you to throw in there if you want to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's over to a mile, which I'm sure a lot of people out there are like, well, the average per mile pay is below this number. Well, yes, that is absolutely correct. But these are averages, and I will say that the outliers have to do more with when you purchased your truck, how new it is, and how much maintenance you need to, right? Like if you bought your truck at the peak of the market when there weren't many trucks available, but rates were super high, you're in a really bad position. Your costs are very high per mile. If you bought your truck prior to that and got a decent price on it and it's still fairly new and you aren't spending a lot on maintenance, yours are still probably much lower than that. The larger carriers that have the newer trucks that didn't overpay during the pandemic are a little below that. The ones that really got whacked and paid huge premiums to buy trucks when everybody needed capacity are higher than that. So that's your average.
There you go. Interesting. Lastly, what are the best load boards for sprinter vans and box trucks? The two that I have seen work the best, Selectus, we've mentioned before, is a really good one. It's really it captures that niche market of the smaller size shipments. You might see a straight truck on there, or a box truck, or a sprinter van, or a hot shot. You do have to have an asset authority to be a member of Selectus. So your backup, I would say DAT tends to come in second place behind them. And the only option for, if you're just a broker, you can go in there and you can find sprinter vans and box trucks. So I don't know of any other load board that I've heard good success come out of in that market. It is a very, very niche world. A lot of those relationships tend to be straight between the broker and that carrier directly. So if I know, hey, this company has sprinter vans and they've got 60 of them, I'm going to call them whenever I have a load out of this area before I even try to post it or whatever, if I don't have access to a good load board for it. But it's kind of like, you're working in the bulk space now, right? You know, you can only get so good with a niche load board. It's a lot of it's relationship driven, right?
It is. And that's really, again, we say this a lot. It's the glue in our industry, right? It's not the contracts, it's the relationships. So That has a lot to do with all of what moves everything in our country, to be honest.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, happy 200, everybody. And I got about halfway through my drink today, so I'll have to finish that one up after we're done recording here. But what do we got coming down the pipeline? And now we get into the 200s of our episodes here. We got some cool stuff coming up with DAT probably next month and into the fall. Oh, God, I don't even want to think about the fall right now. I'm trying to enjoy this midsummer warm weather here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So different points of view. We're going to do an episode on fraud. We're going to be doing an episode on rates with them. And I'm really excited to do both of those. I think we have some stuff slated with Blue Book later as well. Again, probably in the next month or two. I think that's pretty much what we have on scheduled. But hey, for any of our listeners out there, something else that we were going to talk about earlier is Nate and I are going to actively look to bring on an intern for Freight 360. So if you are in the industry looking to get into it and you are looking for some experience and you want to learn from some people that have been in the industry for a while, we're looking to evaluate and possibly bring on an intern to work with us directly.
And you can make a little money.
Absolutely.
That's the whole thing is, I think one of the reasons why we are arguably one of the best on our space when it comes to education is we both work in this every single day. We don't have the man hours and the time to continue to offer top-notch education without the help of other people. The same way we talk about back office in this episode, we need other people to help out. It's what better way to learn different parts of the industry, than to be involved in the education part of it, right? You can learn so much by teaching and by helping out in the education space. So let us know if anyone has interest. We got a few ideas what we want to do, but if you have any interest, just shoot us a message at info@freight360.net. And we do get flooded with emails and questions a lot. So if we don't get back to you right away, just be patient with us. So
absolutely.
Good stuff.
Congrats to 200, man.
Yeah, 200.
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.